Hi, this is Gary with another video in the ESTEST migration series. This video is going to show you how to back up and restore the trac issue tracker service and wiki from estest.ucdavis.edu to your localhost server. The first thing we want to do is to confirm that we have a working version of trac on the localhost server, and you can do that very easily by just checking for the existence of the trac admin binary. And let me see here, we have it installed. If you don't have it installed on Ubuntu or Debian systems, you can very easily go to Synaptic and get it just as a pre-built package like this, and then install it that way. Okay, so to start off with, we're going to initialize an empty trac environment, and then we're going to copy the trac from estest.ucdavis.edu into our local host on top of that empty environment. So first create a directory called ESTrac to contain the environment for trac. Change to that directory, and then we're going to execute the command trac admin and then the name of the environment directory for trac. So it's the new directory, we're going to call it env, and then the command init env. Okay, and so this is going to ask you a few questions about your project. Fill it in as for the details of your project. For us, our project is called ESTEST, and then a lot of these other questions you can go with the default parameters. So SQLite, SVN, and then a path to the repository if you choose to hook those two things up, in this case we don't. Okay, so now you see that it's created this env directory, and you can list it. It's got the basic configuration environment for trac in it. The next thing we want to do is to deploy this trac environment into static web pages so it can interface with Apache, and the command to do that is trac admin env, that is the path to this env that we created, deploy, and then a new directory in which it's going to create the files to connect to the web server. And in this case, it's going to be CGI scripts. So we're going to call that www. Okay, and you see here it's created that directory with those contents. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is to copy the old trac environment, or the trac environment, from estest.ucdavis.edu using a trac hotcopy command, and then just using standard copy or SCP, we're going to copy it into the localhost server. So I'll show you how to do that for estest.ucdavis.edu. First, we're just going to SSH into the remote server. And see here we have those directories. The command we want to execute is trac admin, and then the absolute path to env hot copy, and then a new path to wherever the copy is going to go. In this case, we'll just put it in the desktop environment, so we'll just call it trac.env.copy, and we'll need to do this with a sudo in this case. And it says that the hot copy is done, and we can see it in the desktop like that. Okay, so going back to our localhost, we want to copy the hot copy we just made into the localhost. So what we're going to do is to do an scp-r ESTEST at estest.ucdavis.edu, so the location of the remote server, and then the path to the hot copy. And then we're going to call it something like env.estest for now. We see that we've gotten in there. So just go ahead for just to be safe, we'll go ahead and move the original env that is a blank environment for trac. We'll just call it env.org, and then we'll move env.estest to env. Okay, so now at this point we've copied the environment of trac from ESTEST.ucdavis.edu into the localhost server. We have a couple of other things to copy directly from ESTEST.ucdavis.edu under this www directory that we made previously. We've configured a few custom things such as images and documentation. So you won't necessarily have these if you don't have the same trac environment that we have, but for migration we need to keep these things, we need to copy these things over. So the commands to do that are scp-r. We need the username, trac/ and then also this docs directory, just like that. Okay, so this is basically, we finished copying over trac from ESTEST.ucdavis.edu into localhost, and these two things should be completely cloned now. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is to configure trac to work in the localhost environment. And so what I've done is provided this copy of the Apache configuration for trac in the localhost. So these set of aliases and directories are what we're going to need to configure in the httpd configuration file in order to enable trac working on the localhost. So if you go to where we installed Apache, you can go ahead and just copy this file directly. That is this file here from the desktop into the configuration directory. And then we need to edit the main configuration file. The first thing that we need to edit actually is the directory index command, and you're going to need to add this index.cgi mode so that whenever we access a directory without an index file, it's going to also look for CGI files to serve as the index. And then at the end, you can include the trac configuration that we copied over previously. We'll just use that as an include directly. Okay, except for the fact that I didn't name it that way, so we'll need to rename this one trac.conf. Okay, we see here we have all those configuration files in there. So at this point we can restart the Apache web server. To do that, we just go restart. But before I do that, I'll show you the current state of the website. It's basically, we have from previous videos, we've restored the index web page, but if you try to click on the link to trac, it's going to go for not found. But if we do the restart now on the server, and we click again, it's going to go to the restored version of trac that we had. The final thing that we need to do here is, because for trac, basically what happened is that we use LDAP with trac, and then in the old configuration we've configured LDAP with that. So here we have configured the LDAP server to be the server at ESTEST.ucdavis.edu, and that's actually done by IP address here. You're going to need to change this to be the IP address of the localhost server. One way we could do that, just for demonstration purposes, is going to be setting that to, so that's localhost, and then the port is going to be 1389, and this is usually the port that LDAP is going to use if you're not running it as the super user or as a daemon service. So you can save this file, which is under env conf trac.ini, and then we can go ahead and just log in. And notice this is the trac on the local host. So we've logged in with our user credentials, and you can confirm that the LDAP server is configured correctly here. Okay, so that's basically it to back up and restore trac from estest.ucdavis.edu to the localhost server. We basically went through the steps of initializing an empty trac environment, doing a hot copy on estest.ucdavis.edu trac, copying it in place on the localhost along with some other subdirectories of estrac/www in terms of images and some documentation files. Um, we copied some configuration for httpd.conf and then edited the configuration of the trac on the localhost trac.ini to accept the localhost LDAP server. So that's it, and click for the next video in this series.